Very good afternoon to all the representatives here in the big tent, or the party tent, as we say, to the discussion that we will have on Bosnia-Herzegovina's future perspective as far as the integration is concerned. And I particularly welcome Professor Dževada Šuško, and she's the head of international cooperation of the Islamic community in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and she's also a professor of international relations at the International University of Sarajevo. Very welcome to be here to this discussion.
Thank you very much. It's really a great pleasure to be here again at Ludovika University. I've been here 2 years ago giving a lecture as well on Bosnia-Herzegovina. So I'm glad now to address students here, and I'm very much looking forward to your questions and comments. So the most important part is actually what the questions that you are going to raise, the comments that you have, or your interest, but what you think is important and what you would like to know. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So students and dear audience, in the last 5 or 8 minutes, we will let you some room for questions. So be prepared to have some great questions on hand. And let me start by putting our discussion into context. I think I should start by Bosnia-Herzegovina in the last 20 years being sort of the problem child in the Western Balkans, where some countries were already doing some reforms. They advanced on the path of EU integration. Some of them already started accession negotiations 10 years ago, and this was not the case in Bosnia, but lately there is a positive momentum. After the elections in 2022, the European Council decided to grant candidate status to Bosnia. This was then followed on by the new government. A lot of the recommendation that the European Commission has asked to do has been fulfilled already, which led basically the European Council deciding in March to start accession negotiations also with Bosnia. And I don't want to hide that there is obviously a geopolitical aspect to that, but I would like to focus on the internal reforms that has been started, or that have been, I think, accelerated in 2022. And my question would relate to this: is there a positive momentum? Is this analysis correct from our part? And how do you see that? Please, Professor.
Yes, absolutely. The people are very happy, and the citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina are very happy and looking forward to become citizens of the European Union, to live in a stable democracy where there is a functioning market economy, functioning rule of law, where human rights are equally applied, where minorities are protected. So the atmosphere among the citizens is positive, although I must say that 1 year ago, if you had asked me this question a year ago, I would tell you that the citizens are getting sort of afraid that they might not be accepted within the European Union. But now, with the decision of the European Union to give a candidate status to Bosnia and Herzegovina, to open the negotiation process, we have to as well to take into consideration when long time ago in 2003, when there was a summit of the political leaders in Thessaloniki, in Greece, when it was decided that the Western Balkans would become members of the European Union, when when the European Union opened the doors, when they said, you will, if you fulfill the criteria, you will be a part of our EU family. So since then, there was this optimism among the citizens to this EU integration. And then, as the EU, when Bosnia and Herzegovina submitted its application, then when they defined 14 key priority criteria that Bosnia and Herzegovina needs to fulfill, and then the candidate status, and then the opening of the negotiations. Nonetheless, we have to be very critical about the current status quo in Bosnia and Herzegovina when it comes to politics, to economy, and all these elements that are relevant to the European Union. And this is an important, let's say, marking point was already in 1993 at Copenhagen, when the EU had to find responses how to deal with the recently is not established, but with the states that recently declared their independence from the Soviet Union, all over Eastern Europe, and as well how to deal with the countries which came out of the disintegration of Yugoslavia. And so with the Copenhagen criteria, which said that new members of the European Union must have stable democratic institutions, that they must have a functioning market economy, that they have to establish a strong rule of law, human rights, and respect and protection of minorities. And if we go, so to say, analyze the situation today in Bosnia and Herzegovina along these lines, then we can see that progress has been done, but there is still lots of work to do. And to put it, so to say, in a nutshell, what are the key problems that Bosnia and Herzegovina is currently facing? I would say a divisive rhetoric based on the very complex constitutional framework, and this is as well an interesting aspect, that the current constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina was laid down in 1995 and is still an integral part of the Dayton Peace Agreement. If you recall, there was a war from 1992 until 1995 as a result of the disintegration of Yugoslavia, when initially first Slovenia launched a referendum and asked its citizens whether they want to remain within Yugoslavia or they would like to vote rather for an independent state of Slovenia. And the referendum results were positive. Then Croatia did the same thing, and then thirdly Bosnia and Herzegovina. So all these three former Yugoslav republics used democratic means, a referendum, asking their citizens to decide whether they want to stay within Yugoslavia or they prefer to live in independent states. However, the Bosnia and Herzegovina was a special case as the country itself is very mixed, and this is something that we are very proud of. Bosnia and Herzegovina has always been a multi-ethnic, a multi-religious country at the heart of Europe, in the heart of the Balkans, something that actually European Union lives. You know that there is this key word saying unity in diversity, something that the European Union is proud of, to have this diversity. And this is something that we in Bosnia and Herzegovina are as well proud of. There have always been Catholics, Orthodox, Muslims, and Jews living together. And these peoples, now Bosniaks, Croats, and Serbs, and further 16 minorities, the OSCE counts 16 further minorities living in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have lived always in peace together. So this is not true that Bosnia and Herzegovina is a powder keg or something like that. The wars that happened in Bosnia and Herzegovina have always throughout history been imported, even unfortunately the last war. So what we have within this, unfortunately, to go back to the constitution, is throughout the negotiation process in Dayton, in the United States of America, and as well a constitution for the state of Bosnia and Herzegovina was established. And this constitution has, as I would say, introduced something totally new, which hasn't existed so far in history. And we must say, some scholars even claim that it has been an experiment of the international community to include in a peace agreement as well a constitution for a state. And this entailed that there is a state, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and that the borders of the state of Bosnia, the historical borders of the state of Bosnia and Herzegovina are going to be preserved, that there are now two entities, Republika Srpska and the Federation Bosnia and Herzegovina, and this is something new. Actually, the entity Republika Srpska is, so to say, the result of, I have to say this, successful ethnic cleansing of that territory. Republika Srpska until today is a unitary entity with the headquarters the administration is situated in Banja Luka, whereas the federation is, as the name it states already, has additional territorial units. We call them cantons. And then you have, in addition to that, a municipality level. And I guess you can tell already that this sounds very complex, and it is indeed. So we have different levels, and on all of these levels you have a legislature, you have an executive, you have a judiciary. Bosnia and Herzegovina, with all these different levels, has altogether 180 ministries, 180. And this is not only a complicated political system. This political system contains as well so-called veto mechanisms, which have shown the last 20 years and more to be dysfunctional, that they were very often abused, and very often abused as well when a legislation needed to be passed within the EU integration process. So these veto mechanisms, which are present at the presidency level, but as well in the legislature, meaning in the parliament, always the parliament is bicameral, has shown that many laws could not be passed due to these veto options. So there is well some jokes, you know, saying, well, there is one state, Bosnia and Herzegovina, 2 entities, 3 constituent peoples, 4 traditional religious communities, and tons of problems, you know. So this is what, if you want to describe Bosnia and Herzegovina. But no, to be serious. So we have this problem with the constitutional framework, which is quite complex, with the abuse of these veto mechanisms. They need to be lessened. We have as well several verdicts of the European Court of Human Rights, altogether 6 of them, which have proven that the constitutional framework contains discriminatory elements. Can you imagine that today, in the 21st century, a Jewish citizen of Bosnia and Herzegovina cannot run for president? He cannot as well be a member of the upper house in Bosnia and Herzegovina on different levels. And this is the danger of having established, and the consequence of having established these 3 constituent peoples, instead of, and I guess this is the case of Hungary, that your state is based in the first place on citizens, that the citizens are the basis of a functioning democracy, of a state. And then these citizens might have their identities, whether this is a national ethnic identity, linguistic identity, religious identity. So there, and I guess you have learned as well that this has, scholarly research has proven this, that every human being actually consists of multiple identities. We are not homogeneous. We always differ in certain ways and have different identities. So this is why I would stress, and what's very important, to introduce these constitutional reforms to establish and to make Bosnia and Herzegovina a functional state.
Professor Šuško, you know, as a moderator, my role is also sort of playing the advocate of the devil as well.
Okay.
And since you touched already on the elephant in the room, which is the Dayton Peace Agreement, I think, which back then, in the middle of the 90s, served its purpose in stopping the war, separating the warring fractions, and creating something that was never seen to be something permanent. The idea back then was obviously to have something that would stop the bloodshed, and then let's see whether this will then evolve naturally. Now the problem is, it did not evolve in the way as we would have expected. And some of the blame is also put on the people of Bosnia living there. Mm-hmm. And some of the arguments go in the direction that perhaps the ruling elites, both in the Federation and both in Republika Srpska, are not that interested in doing these reforms. Not just the constitutional reform, electoral reform. And I'm just pointing to the fact that I think it was 2 weeks ago that the High Representative Schmidt had to come up with his very peculiar special powers, introduce legislation that was not done by the government of Bosnia. Yes. What is your take on that?
Yes, thank you very much. This is a very important point. and it was indeed like the key negotiator was a US diplomat, Richard Holbrooke, and if you are interested in the 1990s, and generally if you are interested in diplomacy, this is really a very useful book he wrote, To End a War, by Richard Holbrooke. It's a guideline for what he coined as well, shuttle diplomacy, where he invited the leading political or the political leaders of the 1990s to a military base in Dayton, and he basically forced them to sign eventually then this peace agreement. And it's important as well for you to know during this negotiation process, for sure there were Bosnian political leaders, but as well the president of Serbia, Milosevic, and the then president of Croatia, Tudjman. There was as well a EU representative, Carl Bildt, who would be later then appointed as the High Representative in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And interestingly enough as well, as history has shown, unfortunately, that those on the Serbian side who were present at the negotiation table were later then convicted as war criminals, and some of them are still in prison. So these Dayton Accords for sure were meant, and this is what Holbrooke himself stated, were meant just to end the bloodshed, to end a war. And he himself, I have to say as well, in this, if you read this book, he said what he regrets, and this is the last part of the book, he regrets that he allowed this term Republika Srpska, because initially when Bosnia and Herzegovina declared its independence in 1992, the name was of the country Republic Bosnia and Herzegovina. And then due to the developments throughout the war and the results of the war and during the negotiation process, Republika Srpska got this, let's say, this name, whereas Bosnia and Herzegovina is just standing like this. But this is another story. Later, another very influential as well, high representative, and an integral part of the Dayton Peace Agreement is that the international community would establish a body called OHR, the Office of the High Representative, to take care about the implementation of the Dayton Peace Agreement in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So the OHR is kind of, as some scholars claim, a semi-protectorate. Even the High Representative, the High Representative has ultimate power, political powers, we call them Bonn powers, where he can dismiss a politician who is not working in alignment with the Dayton Peace Agreement, who blocks the functioning of the state. He can as well impose laws. And Christian Schmitz recently is very active in this regard. You asked the second part of your question, just to remind me about...
whether it's the political elites in Bosnia who are interested or not.
This is a key term as well, coined or used very often from the international community, political ownership, requiring and demanding from the local politicians on all these different levels, state level, entity level, and as well canton level, that they should take over the lead when it comes to the EU integration, when it comes to working for the benefit of the state, for the benefit of the citizens. This is absolutely right, and I agree with you, but unfortunately due as well to a high level of corruption that we are facing in Bosnia and Herzegovina, due to the weak rule of law, due to the unequal implementation of laws, even if they are state laws, but they're not equally applied on both entities. We still need as well, next to the constitutional reform, we need as well a reform or strengthening the judiciary in general in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So that they work, eventually that the politicians would be more accountable, that they would work with a higher level of transparency, and that the judiciary is as well not siding. We have as well this, but some judiciary instances within the judiciary are kind of siding with certain political parties. So this is as well important. However, However, so political ownership is correct. The political elite in Bosnia and Herzegovina has its responsibility. But nonetheless, due to the fact that the constitutional restraints are like that, and these are that due to the fact that the state consists of Serbs, Bosniaks and Croats, that these constituent peoples are recognized, the whole political system is, so to say, split in three. We have the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina consists of three persons, one Bosniak, one Croat, one Serb. And this goes to the lower levels of governance in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And so instead of focusing on an inclusive national identity, instead of the politicians rather work for the benefit of the state, we have now the political leadership which rather works either for their political party or for the benefit of their constituent people. And this is and this is a bad consequence for the state of Bosnia and Herzegovina. What I want to say is that Bosnia and Herzegovina should move in the direction of establishing a state of citizens where their citizens should have collective rights, where the language of Bosniaks, Croats and Serbs are fully respected and applied, where their culture is fully respected and applied and taught in schools, and where, so to say, their collective rights are respected. But we need to have a rather inclusive national identity to get away from this divisive rhetoric. And we cannot exclude as well the responsibility of the international community, because the OHR is still here. The constitution is an integral part of an international peace agreement. So we need the OHR, we need European Union forces in Bosnia and Herzegovina until this state is not becoming strong and functioning.
No, this is sort of the classical chicken or egg problem. I mean, where do you start? You start with changing the constitution, which is the biggest task of all, and then hoping that this will have a positive spillover effect, or you start small with the anti-corruption, the judiciary field, in building up the public administration, and at the very end, you try to fix the biggest problem. And there, unfortunately, I have to say, both the European Union and the US were not always eye to eye seeing how to solve the problem. But trying to enlarge this set of problems that is causing the difficulties to go ahead, there are obviously international actors as well who are not helping, to say the least, these things. How do you see that? Because obviously now in these big geopolitical changes that we are undergoing through, there is obviously a huge amount of disinformation spread. There is a huge amount of false information. Is this a problem? How big of a problem is that?
Yes.
And then let's talk then afterwards also about your two neighbors who are also guarantors of the of your country, which is also a potential problem.
Yes, thank you. Just to respond briefly to your comment on what I was saying, I would rather prefer a holistic approach to address the issues, the challenge that Bosnia and Herzegovina is facing from a political level, from a political perspective, from an economic perspective, to build a rather attractive business climate for foreign investments, to address it as well from a societal level, from human rights level, from a legal level, so to have this holistic approach to address these different challenges that Bosnia and Herzegovina is facing. Regarding fake news, I would share with you, since I am as well, as you can tell, I am a practicing Muslim. I am a Bosniak, coming originally from Bosnia and Herzegovina, although I lived most part of my life in Germany. This is where I grew up. But there is as well, when it comes to fake news, there is a false accusation of radicalization of Bosnian Muslims. We unfortunately, there are from time to time news in the media or statements from political leaders, as either from Bosnia and Herzegovina, but as well from neighboring countries, but unfortunately as well in the European Parliament, stigmatizing the Bosnian Muslims, the Bosniaks, as radical, as a potential threat to Europe, as potential terrorists. I can tell you, and this is really not a subjective point of view, you can read lots of scholars who have written about this. Bosnian Muslims, Bosniaks, consider themselves and are for 600 years living in Europe, consider themselves as Europeans, as European Muslims, as indigenous European Muslims, who identify with European values, who have lived their religion in a secular system for more than 100 years, who have as well very strong memories and a positive memory of the Austro-Hungarian period. Benjamin Kalai was the finance minister, and he was in charge of Bosnia for more than 20 years, and he's still in the memory of the people because he's considered to be a positive figure. So our historical ties with Hungary are strong. During the medieval kingdom of Bosnia, the daughter Elizabeth of Bosnia, she married to the Hungarian king. And their daughter Jadwiga would then become the first queen of Poland. So there are historical ties, and this is a memory that even the Bosnian Muslims today carry with themselves, that they want to live in Europe as regular citizens with their religious identity. But there is no doubt that they have lived, and I would even think that what they carry with them, what other peoples in Europe have not experienced, living together with other ethnic and religious communities. Tolerance is something that you don't have to teach the Muslims in Bosnia. Coexistence is not something that they have to learn. Living in a democracy, in a secular state where there is rule of law, Sharia has never been an issue in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The people, and this is why it is very often considered to be very offensive when such fake news are spread in relation to the Muslims in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Although I must say they would have a reason to be radical. Just if you imagine that they have been in numbers the largest civilian targets during the last war. Because the last war, the ideology why Bosnia and Herzegovina has been attacked by neighboring Serbia and then Croatia was this ideology. The idea was Bosnia and Herzegovina belongs to us. Bosnia and Herzegovina does not have a right to be an independent state. In addition to that, we do not want to have Muslims in our country. So this is why they were detained in detention camps, expelled from their homes, and massively killed. Roy Gutman, a US journalist who came to Bosnia in summer 1992 at the very beginning of the war, and he took photos of concentration camps in northwestern Bosnia, and he published his book, A Witness to Genocide. He was the one already in summer 1992 who said Holocaust is repeating itself on European soil. So, despite these experiences, the Bosnian Muslims did not radicalize. You have no serious voice talking about revenge. It's rather about talking, let the judiciary do their task. We are for truth and justice, but there are instances who are in charge of that. So I would rather say that Bosnia and Herzegovina is a chance, an opportunity for Europe, for the European Union. And in the end, I mean, this is a country with now, the last census had counted 3.5 million citizens. And now we have as well an issue regarding brain drain. Many of our educated and high-skilled citizens are leaving the country and settling down in Western Europe. Now the population size is about 3.2 million. So European Union encompasses 500 million citizens. I think the European Union wouldn't even feel it to accept Bosnia and Herzegovina as its member state, and this would have such a positive message for the citizens and for the whole Balkan region. And I have to mention this, and this will be my final thing. When in 1878, when the great powers, in 1878, late 19th century, when the great powers met in Berlin, at the Congress of Berlin, to decide what is going to happen with the countries, because the Ottoman Empire gradually withdrew from Southeastern Europe. And now there was a power vacuum, and there was this question, who's going to rule over these peoples, over these countries, over these territories? And Bismarck was the negotiator. What Holbrooke was in 1995, Bismarck was in 1878. And Bismarck said, a stable Bosnia means a stable Balkan. So, and this is perhaps a good message as well for the European Union.
Thank you. I absolutely share the ranking and how to try with a holistic view to solve the problem. But I agree with you that economic and social well-being of people is always something that has to come very fast. And in this respect, if you were to have the magic word in your garderobe, what would be the first things to be done? I've been to Bosnia many times. It's a beautiful country, but it's very difficult to traverse. I think infrastructure certainly is something that needs to be on the highest top priorities to be done. So, but beyond infrastructure, but also infrastructure, where do we start? And there is now the idea of the Commission to pour money funded by the European Union that would potentially attract businesses and developments, but I think you have to start with infrastructure. That's the number one thing.
I agree absolutely. We need to improve the infrastructure, and this, I mean, to build highways, to expand the railway, and to link Bosnia and Herzegovina more with its neighboring countries and with the whole European region. And this is what EU integration of Bosnia and Herzegovina would lead to, that they would have access to more funds to establish these, to complete these infrastructural projects which were started already.
And what can we as member states do? I mean, there's the European agenda, there's the European institutions, there is the common ideas that we do, but what can we do as member states, especially member states like Hungary that are very close to Bosnia?
Yeah, as I said, the historical link of Bosnia and Herzegovina with Hungary is present and still present in the people's minds, and we are very much looking forward to Hungary's presidency at the European Council, and I think this is particularly because Hungary has clearly stated that they would support the EU integration process of the Western Balkans, and I think this is important to have the support of Hungary. And we have as well a small Bosniak community here in Hungary, rather in Pécs, in this part. So the support of Hungary and the support of other EU member states is vital. As you know, any enlargement needs the consent of all member states. So we need Hungary's support, we need Hungary's presence, we need Hungary's open commitment to the EU integration of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I hope that Hungary will be as well more present there, that there are going to be more visits, either on the political level, but as well on the societal level. I am welcoming many delegations, as well student delegations from abroad in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Just the other day there was a delegation of students from the College of Europe at Natolin who are regularly visiting the whole region. So I hope perhaps as well to have a delegation of Ludovica University soon in Sarajevo. And Sarajevo is a beautiful city. If you haven't been there yet, beautiful. And take your hiking shoes with you. You can hike, it's an ideal setting for hiking.
I've been to Sarajevo many times, and I just can recommend what Professor Šuško was saying. It's a beautiful city, and one of the things that was striking to me the first time I went there, and I was I think about 25, that it is a very I mean, Sarajevo has certain parts that look very similar to Central European cities. It is a mixture indeed of Central European, Southern Balkan area, so I felt naturally at home in certain places. And obviously, as Hungarians, we are attached to some of the buildings and some of the infrastructure that was built during the Austro-Hungarian Empire's history. Thank you so much, Professor
You're
Šuško, for all this information. These are very, very important and interesting questions, also from our Hungarian perspective. And so. I can perhaps finish by saying that with the upcoming Hungarian presidency, starting on the 1st of July this year, one of the main themes of the presidency is enlargement. And enlargement, and this is probably not a secret that I can already tell in this circle, enlargement for us always meant Western Balkans. Primarily, obviously, the eastern flank is important as well, but for us, because of the historical, geographical proximity, for us, enlargement always starts with the immediate neighborhood, and that is Western Balkans, and that is Bosnia indeed.
Thank you.
So I think we stop here. As we promised, we will have about 8 minutes for questions. So I'm looking and reaching out to all of you. Are there any questions to Professor Šuško? Please use the availability that you have. I will pose the first questions until some of my fellow colleagues will perhaps also follow suit. One of the very interesting things, perhaps rather sad things that I've been witnessing in the last 20 years is the separation of those things that I think were more or less commonly used, and that is language. When I grew up, there was one, at least from the Hungarian perspective, one Serbo-Croat language. And there were obviously regional and some other differences here and there, but it was considered to be one major group of languages. And when I was in university, and we had some students from Vojvodina who had the problem that they only knew one foreign language, then the separation of languages accelerated, and then it became different languages, and it was Serbian, Croatian, Bosniak now, which, by the way, helped my fellow students because now they spoke 3 different languages, although speaking the same thing. But how do you see this development? Is this going to be even growing further apart, not helping this cultural coming together of these people?
The fact that today in Bosnia and Herzegovina we have 3 languages that are recognized, Bosnian, Croat, and Serbian language, is just a result of political processes. This is basically the same language, and if you ask and discuss this with linguists, with experts in linguistics, they will confirm you this. So I completely understand if somebody speaks either Serbian or Croatian, same the other way. So there are slight differences, slight words where you can detect that this is rather Croat language, or the way Serbian language is pronounced, then this might be Serbian, but basically it is the same language. And this is unfortunately the fact of these divisive, what I mentioned initially, this divisive politics to establish, and this is why it is so dangerous to keep the constitution the way it is, with this with these 3 constituent peoples, where you divide everything in 3, and these peoples have then their linguistic identity and their religious identity. And the fact is, in the Balkans, that the national, religious, and linguistic identity are the same. So we can tell this from censuses, population census. When there's a population census and the person that ticks that he or she is a Croat, he or she will tick as well that he or she is Catholic and that he or she speaks Croat language. Same with Bosniak. Bosniaks, Muslim, Bosnian language. Serb, Orthodox, Serb language. This is the constellation of the peoples in the Balkans. Nonetheless, I think for the sake of, and to use the EU language, peace, stability, prosperity within societal and political environment of good neighborly relations and in alignment with the acquis communautaire, it would be of utmost importance, not only for Bosnia and Herzegovina, but as well for, so to say, the social cohesion of the whole region, to rather foster an inclusive national identity in each of these countries, so that the citizens who live there and who have lived there for centuries and who identify with Bosnia and Herzegovina, that they should rather identify with the state of Bosnia and Herzegovina and then have their collective rights, as I said, and their identities.
Thank you.
But feel free to ask any question. Perhaps you have a question on Islam. I can respond as well, although I'm not a theologian. But I doubt that you have a regular contact and opportunity to talk to a person who comes from Bosnia and Herzegovina, who has this background. So feel free. There are no wrong questions. I would just, for me, it's as well interesting to hear what is what you are sensitive about, what you would like to hear more, what I missed perhaps in my conversation. Obviously, the students at Ludovica University, they are all geniuses. They know everything.
You should know that Ludovica Festival is also having night programs as well. And I think some of the students have been already participating yesterday. But if you allow me just a last question, because you spoke about social cohesion, you spoke about tools that can facilitate this joint feeling of the people. I think sports, and this year we have Olympics, and you know, for Hungarians, sports are very important. We have European Championships in football, we have Olympics. Is this playing an increasingly important part? Because there, I think, well, I'm sure you don't have Republika Srpska, you don't have the federation, but you have Bosnia as one team. Does this help?
Absolutely. So the national football team in Bosnia and Herzegovina is unfortunately not that successful. But nonetheless, when there is a football match, you know, you see all those flags of Bosnia and Herzegovina, people are watching it, people have this special feeling about it. So absolutely, and this is what sports can do, what culture can do in general. So all what we know from diplomacy, this soft power has a huge impact on the people itself, but as well on a political level. So absolutely, sports plays an important role. What Bosnia would need in terms of as well, so to overcome this divisive rhetoric, is as well a profound educational reform. I must unfortunately state here that if you read in Republika Srpska history textbooks, you would be surprised that future generations are actually taught biases, stereotypes about Turks, about the Ottomans, I mean, no doubt about it that the Ottoman Empire occupied the whole territory of Southeastern Europe. No doubt about it. This wasn't colonial empire. But you know, it is always about the issue how history is taught, how history is interpreted, and how history is written. And you know, it's dangerous today in the context of Bosnia and Herzegovina, having in mind the recent conflict in the 1990s. The textbooks in our schools should rather focus on shared values, on a shared history, on a common goals that the future leaders of our country have. And this is still an issue, so we need to include as well an educational reform to address this challenge as well.
I think this is a perfect ending for our discussion. Being here, the university education and the power of education, I think it cannot be overestimated. So once again, thank you very much, Professor Šuško, for joining us today. I think we heard a lot of interesting things, and we look forward to have you back next time around as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I wish you lots of success with your work.